My name's Brenda Dunn, and the coolest shit I've ever done is get fired from my job.
That's right. Welcome back, my creative nerds. I'm your host, Sean McNeil. This is, of course, Do More Cool Shit, the podcast. And this is episode 50. I'm so excited that you're here. You're joining me. It's another brand new Monday. And if, of course, it's not Monday, you know it's only the second Monday, the third Monday, the fourth Monday of the week. You know how we do here. But this is the 50th episode. I'm so excited to be able to say that we've done 50 of these friggin' episodes yet. It's still baby. It's still baby. We're still early. We're still learning. We're still chiveling our way here. But I'm excited that I've made 50 of these. I'm excited that you guys have hung out for 50 of these episodes with me. It's been such a fun journey already. And I could not think of a better guest to have on this episode than, of course, my partner in life, Brenda Dunn. Otherwise known as Artinjest. Awesome conversation here that we're going to have. But of course, before we get to episode 50, I always want to jump back and take a look at the episode before, and I want to jump ahead to 51 and tell you what's coming up. So let's take a look back. I want to talk a little bit about the intention action gap. So if you didn't get a chance to go and listen to episode 49, I talked a little bit about what that intention action gap is and how to translate more of your intentions into actions. We looked at a couple different studies there, and one of the things that a lot of them found was that about 50% of our intentions only ever translate into action. And there's a ton of tips and tricks in that episode that can help you change that statistic so that it's not 50%, so that you can join the anomaly and help some of your intentions become more actionable, actually. And then, of course, after this episode coming out on June 10th, in 2 Mondays from now, I want to dive a little bit more into authenticity, what that means, what that looks like for you, potentially a couple little exercises that are going to be able to help you get through some of that stuff, and just how much authenticity can really mean to us as we move through life. So that's episode 51. That's coming out in 2 weeks. But let's start right now with this episode. Today, I get to have this awesome conversation with Brenda. Of course, I have so many conversations with Brenda literally every single day. We're talking about this stuff. We're talking about creating. We're talking about being a creative. And I've been lucky enough to have Brenda in my life now for a very long period of time where we're able to spark off of each other. And I was really interested in having her come on this episode, particularly episode 50, which seems like some kind of landmark for us here, to be able to bring the energy that she has into your ears, into your eyeballs, if you're watching on YouTube. And just hopefully you'll listen to this conversation and you'll understand that that there is nothing easy about finding your authentic self, that there's nothing easy about coming on this journey, right? And the title of this episode being what happens when you find your authentic self. Well, everything everything happens, right? In this case, onesies, gongs, kazoos, almost no art done online in front of other people, but tons of art done behind the scenes. Community calendars, Camp Chaos, which is coming out in July 1st, which is a whole thing. And if you haven't tuned into twitch.tv/artinjest, you have to do that on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. on Wednesdays, and noon, 12 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. Give yourself a treat. You know, if you need an energy boost, you need all of the things I just said thrown at your face and into your ear holes. Do it, because it is a real treat. And I know, because I've been a part of this journey, that it wasn't an easy journey. It wasn't a quick journey. It was a very long journey. It was a journey that required a few little detours along the way, detours that were self-chosen, detours that were world-chosen. But one thing that I always have admired about Brenda, and one of the things we talk about a lot in this episode too, is her ability to say yes, her ability to believe in herself, even when she didn't believe in herself, if that makes sense. If you listen to the episode further, you will understand how that makes sense and how that dichotomy can happen. And I know that you have experienced it yourself, right? Sometimes you just have to push forward, even though there is an inkling of doubt. You must still push forward. And once you push forward, you're going to find that authenticity. So I'm really enthused to be able to bring that to you. And one of the things that we talked about, here's just a few little rundowns of some of the things we talked about. And I really love how Brenda framed this, actually, is when you're trying to find yourself and when you're trying to understand who it is you're going to be and what you're going to do in this world and how you can live and exist on Earth, right? Is, I think the question she said was, how can you be of service, right? So if you are struggling to find the skill or what you might bring to the creative world, so I think this happens often, right? I think we understand that, oh, I'm someone that wants to do more cool shit, right? That's a question that happens. That's a thing that happens. We have that desire. We have that intention. If you follow from the last episode, you have that intention of wanting to do more cool shit, right? But you say, I don't know what skills I have. Well, I love that Brenda, in the early days of her journey, was like asking how could she be of service, right? And one of the ways of being of service, I think, is being able to check your ego. And Brenda talks a little bit about that, how to check your ego. And if you're not finding the skills that you think you could bring to the table, or you don't know what skills you have, then she suggests, and I agree, is how do you look at a situation, no matter what it is, and say, what are the jobs or what are the things that people aren't willing to do that you could do, that you could take on enthusiastically, right? And you check that ego. It doesn't matter how old you are, what kind of jobs you've had before. If you want to forge this new path, you're going to have to prove yourself a little bit, right? And you're going to want to learn. You're going to want to shut up, and you're going to want to learn a little bit. So one of the ways to do that is check your ego at the door. And we talked a little bit about that, and Brenda will tell some of her stories. We talked a little bit about finding a community. We're always talking about finding a community here. Brenda has found an amazing community on Twitch and in the real world as well. And gathering the people and surrounding yourself with those people is so important. We talk a little bit about creating with that community, right? Not being isolated and creating alone. And I think that will help, especially for creatives who are trying to find out what the next step is for them. We also, I want you to really understand, and I've already said it, but I'm going to say it again before we get into the conversation, that it is a long journey. It is a long journey. Life is a long journey. It's a short journey, but it's a long journey in many ways. And it's a long journey that can have many different speed bumps and many different changes. And I want you to listen to this episode. I want you to count how many different times Brenda talks about different things happening in her world, the changes that have shifted, the currents that have shifted, the world that have shifted, and how she was able to adapt to some of that. And if you can take any solace in knowing that that those changes could have disrupted anything or everything all at once, and that she still moves forward in her story and comes out for the better at the end, I hope you take that solace. I hope you understand that you too can do this, right? There is no magic. It is not insurmountable. It is absolutely possible to do that. Yes, you may need some tools in your toolbox. Well, Brenda's going to give them to you. So without any further discussion, I want to bring to you the amazing discussion that I got to have, and I got to have it in Artinjest HQ. So if we're about to switch into a different scene here, and you're gonna see the conversation that Brenda and I had. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, do yourself a favor. Just go over to the Do More Cool Shit channel on YouTube. Just for 2 minutes and just take a look at the world that Brenda has created for herself and the space that we're in, because even just that visual alone is so exciting. And again, I'm just excited. I'm just excited for you guys to get in there, listen to this. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I will see you guys on the other side. Hell yeah. Welcome into the Do More Cool Shit podcast, Brenda Dunn.
Welcome into the Artinjest studio, Do More
Yeah, we're here. We're in the studio. I was brought in.
I flew you in.
I snuck right in.
From the other end of the
hallway. We're doing this
hallway.
episode. It's episode 50, you know?
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
50 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be
I talked to so many folks.
You talked to a lot of folks.
I talked to a lot of folks.
I heard you talk to many of them either from your studio or from the podcasting space downstairs. I got to hear
That's true.
all those conversations. They're very good.
That's true.
You should go watch them and listen to
or
them.
listen, watch.
Do both.
Do all the things. Do whatever the hell you want.
Listen to it through one time and then go back to watch it to make sure you really absorb
Listen
it.
while you're watching. Like, listen to the
Put them
podcast,
both
but also
on one
watch it on YouTube.
headphone in here and one in here and let them stereo
Yeah, there you go.
surround you.
Yeah.
Which is a bit like my experience of you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
In case anybody doesn't know, if you don't know, you're dumb. Art and Jess is my partner. We're here. We're doing the studio thing. We're in the studio. It's a good time.
It is a good time.
Okay, make things happen and make things. You make things and you make things happen.
That's true.
Why?
I think I don't have a choice. I feel like I'd explode if I didn't.
That's good. Also, okay, the greatest thing you ever did was get fired from a job.
That's true.
How? Tell us more. That was used to be corporate businessy business.
I used to
Brenda.
be corporate business, Brenda. Yeah, I was a corporate businessy business. And to be fair, I don't know if it's even a fair thing to say that that's something I did. That's something that happened. And then I was like, whoa.
You worked real hard at it.
I worked real hard at it. Yeah, no, I was doing a very different thing. I was working a very different job. And I was really, really grateful for that job. It was an amazing job in the mental health industry. And I learned a lot from it. And I met a lot of people that I learned a lot from while doing it. And one day I went into my busy business job and it was gone. They were like, this job's gone. It doesn't
exist anymore.
Whatever. But I was also super fortunate in that it wasn't like, I like saying, oh, I got fired because it sounds kind of dramatic. And, I'm here for the drama. But what actually happened was that I had a very kind, I think, parting of ways with the place I was working. And it gave me something that I think is incredibly precious, especially as a grown-up, which is time. I was just given time. I had some funds. I had the chance to sort of rethink what I was doing. I was given like career counseling services. I got to go and talk to someone about what I thought my next move should be. And it was partially through that I learned that I was probably headed for a pretty serious burnout. And it was kind of coincidental that the job that was burning me out was just sort of pulled out from under me, potentially just before. I kind of think it was probably happening to a certain extent already. But I remember my first thought upon hearing what should have been pretty devastating news was, oh my gosh, I don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah. Thank God.
Yeah, which was
Thank
kind
God.
of shocking and surprising. And also one of the first moments where I went, oh my God, that's not like, where did that come from?
Yeah. Yeah. So before that corporate job, though, you were doing some art and art degrees, and then what happened when you graduated and you were like, okay, let's get this corporate job instead of pursuing the arts? Like what happened there?
Well, you and I have talked about this before. Your 6-year-old self always knows. Like the thing that you would have said when you were 6 is you're probably on the right track at that point in your life. And my 6-year-old self wanted to be an artist and said that I was going to be an artist, but I didn't have a lot of great examples of people doing that as a career. So I still pursued it as an education and as a passion. And I've always drawn and made stuff and thought that was a really incredible way to sort of process and connect. And I did a studio art degree. I had a really, really great fine art school where I had a really, really good studio art program. But in that studio art program, there were not a lot of great examples of people that looked to me like successful artists and also healthy people. It was still, and I think maybe it is still very much a fashion that people would suffer for their art. And people talked a lot about how hard it was and how much they were struggling. And these were the the program that I went to was amazing. The part of the rule, I guess, there was that the professors all had to be very active practicing contemporary artists. So it was a much closer look at what it's like to be an artist in the traditional visual art sense, where you're showing in a gallery, you're probably participating in symposiums, you're, you know, that's sort of your markers of success. And they were all staggeringly talented, like people I was just in awe of, who also had this sort of fancy mystery to them, that they were also professors. So they were sort of your oracle and your tour guide through what is supposed to be this kind of confusing world. I did not see a lot of examples of super healthy, like, and these people all seem happy and well adjusted, and like they have good boundaries and work life. Like, we were all modeling that, like, you're supposed to be in your studio before anyone else, you're grinding. I did a program that was supposed to model being a practicing artist, where you got a studio space and you were doing like self-directed work. So it was, as far as I knew, as close as you could get to being a professional, and they would have...
You're supposed to have a studio space.
Exactly. And you're supposed to be in there suffering, living on coffee, crying over your failures, you know? And they would have like juggernauts in the community, like people who are in the National Gallery now. We're coming and touring our which is incredible. This is everything that you could possibly want. And also I remember thinking, like, I don't know if I can keep this up. I'm gonna be a mess. I'm gonna be.
Well, you probably already were.
I was already a bit of a mess, and a lot of us were a mess.
I feel like everybody was.
And you were kind of performing being a mess too.
Which you were supposed to be.
You were supposed to be a mess. You were supposed to be sort of modeling that, and I totally bought it. I'm not saying I was like better than that. I was like, I saw the struggle, and for a lot of people that was also very much what was happening, you know. Yeah. And maybe also that was my lens. Maybe people were doing amazing and I just didn't have the ability to see it. So at what point
did you decide, because you finished the program?
I did, yeah.
And then what happened after that?
So because I was worried about being a healthy person and a successful artist, I got a second degree while I was doing my studio art degree. I also got a degree in English literature. And I was pretty good at school. Like, school's fine. I can do school. And so I got the chance to go to grad school and do my master's. And it's still one of those things where when I look back now, if I had been a little more in touch with what was going on, the people who really saw me clearly were like, grad school? Really? Like, you want to be by yourself in an office, like toiling over some tiny hyper-focused part of one particular type of book or something? Like, maybe, but I don't know. But I thought that was a more practical option. I thought that was a practical possibility. I was like, well, then I can teach, I guess, you know, I can go in to get my PhD, whatever. So I got my master's, and then I was like, art and English. Art and English, super practical.
Totally practical.
Super
you
practical.
Can do it.
You know,
that's good.
And that, like, to think that English literature was like my more practical degree. But that's what you do when you're scared and you're getting paid to go to school. You know, you and I have both had that experience. And people are like, "You're so smart. You're so great at this. Keep going to school. Here's scholarships. Here's money. Your profs love you." You know, you're like, "Okay, I guess.
Sure, I guess I'll just keep going.
I'll keep going." And like, you're funding me to be alive. That's great. So when I got to the end of my master's, it became very apparent that a PhD was not going to be for me, not a good idea. And at that time, I knew someone who was working in the mental health field, and they were like, "Oh, you're bilingual and you have a master's. This is an arena where that is incredibly useful. Do you want to come try doing this?" And I was like, well, I need a job. I want to help.
I'm out of school now. And
I thought, I don't know, I thought after like a really fluffy feeling, like, I'm going to be an artist, which, you know, the world tells you is kind of self-indulgent or not very viable. I was like, well, then, but I can do something good. I can be in the helping professions. I can help people. So I was like, and I got the job.
It was just that easy.
And it was just that, I mean, you know,
And then you kind of, I don't know, I only know the story, but like you lost that art side a little bit in the middle of that.
I think it kind of,
I mean, it came out in different ways, but
I was going to say it came out in different ways. I don't know if you've ever, some of the people who listen might resonate with this. There are places where, you know, in the office and in the workspace and in the library and in the fast food restaurant, there's the person that you're like, oh, we have to make a poster. Mm-hmm. Do you know who can do that? Is so-and-so.
Sure.
Oh, we have to plan a party. You know who's kind of good at that is so-and-so. And like, sometimes I think that those are our like tantruming 6-year-old selves coming out. Whatever you're the go-to person for in the job that you tolerate, that's probably closer to your true self. So like I was in a lot of ways that person, and I was good at the job. Like, I was getting some kind of fulfillment, but I was also like painting my nails really elaborately. I think we've talked about,
I remember
like,
that. Yeah.
That was one of the
there's a lot of nail colors.
Exactly.
Like a lot.
And, like trying to find creative
to go with
outlets.
her important business suits.
My important business suits.
Yeah, but then you would color the nails, which I always akin to like, the guys with the very important business
socks.
Suits, but then the funny little socks that are colorful.
Or like big earrings. I wore big wooden earrings, great big earrings.
And that was your artistic flair.
And also that sort of like trying to preserve a sliver of yourself.
Yeah, hanging on to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when that all happened and that disappeared, how did you discover, like, thankfully that happened somewhat early in your life.
Yeah, it did.
And then what's the next step after that?
I mean, it rocked me pretty good. I really thought that I was on the right track. I thought that I had kind of gotten there by luck a little bit, but that's, stuff like that has happened. That happens. So I think the thing that was almost more concerning to me than losing the job was that I had gotten that far into a career that I didn't want. And that it was as much a surprise to me as anyone that I didn't want it. And that my immediate visceral reaction when I had a chance to have a visceral reaction was, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
So I really, I think my first reaction was sort of a promise to myself that no matter what, we weren't gonna end up accidentally living someone else's life by that sort of passive go with the flow. This seems fine. And, a lot of people seem to think this is a good thing to have and a thing you should want,
Right.
I think we're all really susceptible to that sometimes.
That's actually interesting. A lot of people thinking that, because I was going to ask about like your friends and your family at the time of like, oh, this is good, this is important, you're doing well.
Oh yeah,
you're on the right track.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you had asked any of the people who knew me at the time, they would have been like, oh, she loves her job. She stresses her out sometimes, but she absolutely. If you had asked me, I would have been like, I love my job.
Right.
Love my job, and there are things about it that I did love.
Yeah.
And also, as with any, I think, mental health profession and like helping professions generally, the people who love it also let it chew them up and spit them out. When they're not, and I wasn't skilled enough to not do that. You don't have to, but I was not self-aware enough or skilled enough to not let it eat me alive, So the first thing that I did was party like a frat boy for months.
The first time after years of doing,
very buttoned up, kind of like, and also, I wasn't really able to, my job had a lot of privacy concerns, so there were certain things around social media that I couldn't really do, which when you and I started hanging out, this was one of the things that I really got to take part in for the first time was social media, but just like going to events, meeting people who were participating in the art space. You were a part of that, but a lot of the people that are active members of the arts world in the city of Ottawa, I met at that time. So I rebuilt a network that was very different than the network I had before. And that doesn't mean that I disregarded the network I had before. It just meant that had served a different purpose. And when I decided that I wanted to try to re-enter the arts field, I approached it by saying, what do I have that could be of use? Who do I know that I could be of use to, and how can I be of service to this industry or this place that I'm really starting from scratch again with, even though I had the education in the background, I hadn't been participating in that.
Yeah, you had the education, but not the community.
Exactly. And community, I would argue, is, at least in my experience, more important.
Yeah,
if I had skipped the education and gone straight to the community, it would have been fine.
Yeah, we always talk about that.
Would have been
here
fine.
on this podcast. I'm always talking about, like, find your people, and they're out there.
They're out there.
It doesn't matter where, how strange or how weird or whatever it is, the thing that you're going to do. It's all, there are people out there.
100%.
There is a group of women who I know that rip stitches. They get together and they rip stitches out of clothing.
Sure.
And that's the hobby that they have.
Sounds amazing.
You know, and it's like,
sounds incredibly satisfying.
like, you know, who would think that that's a group? But it is.
It is.
It is. There's a group for everything.
Find the people who are doing things you want to do and join them.
Yeah.
Find the people who are doing things you would.
Because they're doing it. There are people out there doing it. Sure. Yeah. And that I don't know, I feel like that can happen either close by, like in your own city, in your own town, whatever, or now because of the internet, like, keep searching. Because I think that is hard too, right? I think if, like, I don't know, if you were corporate, if you were in that other world with that network, you know, and you're not outgoing, how do you find those other people?
Yeah, I still think about what, you know, I try to be mindful of the fact that I was doing that from a place of enormous privilege. Sure. So I had a safety net that let me spend time doing that without fear. You know, had I been in a state of panic about, like, rent is due and I have this many days, it would have been a very different story. I would like to think that I would have found my way anyway, but I'm not willing to give myself that credit, honestly.
Yeah, that'd be really hard.
It'd be really hard. I had some time to think about it. I also was lucky enough to live in a city that had a lot to offer in that area, and I liked going and meeting people and talking to them, and I was coming to it, I think this is a huge advantage, I was coming to it knowing that I had something to offer. It took me some time to pin down exactly what it was, but, you know, there was a period where I was editing papers. Remember, I did those those like educational journals, and so I was doing some editing work. I'm terrible at editing, but I was doing it, and I got that job through a friend, and it was sort of like when and where you can. I actually went to old school. I went to a gallery, physically went to the gallery and walked in and found the director, and I was like, you should hire me. She was like, hello, what? And I was like, I'd be good at this and you should hire me. And lucky for me, that was an incredible director who's still someone I give an enormous amount of credit to, who taught me so much about being a working artist and what it's like to participate in the gallery space, which at the time was the only avenue really that I knew about, you know. Yeah,
when you went in there, what did you think, what did you think your future was going to be? Paint, like, make painting, sell painting?
I don't know. I had done a little bit of that, and I wasn't sure. I still felt a lot of the old suspicion about where are the healthy people that are painting things and then selling paintings through some mystical process. You know, it's even the best schools, there's still this magic that happens between when you make something and when it is sold enough that you are sustained. That it's like tying a bow tie. Step number 1 looks fine. Step number 2 looks fine. But step number 3, a lot of stuff has happened, and we don't always know what it is. So I was curious about it, and I knew that gallery spaces were a place that I would get to interact with a lot of people who were doing this thing. So again, it wasn't that I knew what the job was going to be. It's that I knew the people who were doing things that looked like something, at least in the room, with what I wanted to do. So I made it a point to go be in those rooms. And I wanted to learn. And I went knowing I'm an idiot. I know nothing. And also, there is something of value that I can offer. Just trying to combine those two, I think. Which was...
How did you know what you had to offer? Because I feel like a lot of people don't know, even though they could do years and years of schooling or whatever. Like, how did you know what you had to offer?
I mean, I think I had the experience of think about what you're asked to do in the environment. Were you the one that made the poster? Mm-hmm. Were you the one that came up with the snappy name for the team because you were a little bit funny?
Yeah.
You know, and if you genuinely feel like you don't have anything to offer, do the stuff other people think they're better than. Do the stuff other people don't want to do. Be the one who's like, you don't want to package up those 100. That's a pain for you.
Yeah.
I'll do that. I'll do that. Tell me about what
I'll be really good at it.
Packaging. That's fine.
Yeah.
Not being better than the work, especially if you don't think you have anything to offer. What do the other people not want to do? Be of service. Be of use. You know.
Yeah. So then you went to the gallery.
Yeah.
And then
I volunteered a bunch of places.
Volunteered a bunch of
volunteering.
spots. And so now you're surrounding yourself with what do we call them? Serious artists, the normal artists.
I mean, I liked the word creative. You kind of introduced me to the word creative. It was a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Serious artists were in there.
But these were the people that were like, you know, doing traditional art. How did you venture into whatever the hell it is you're doing now?
I mean,
how did that? I mean, that's a long process. So I feel like I want to talk about that process as well.
They weren't all people doing traditional art, which I think is a big part of it. I volunteered at a few places, galleries, but also I started volunteering with, we had the Young Arts Leaders Collective, which was through the Arts Network Ottawa. And they were doing more of kind of the administrative work, some of the community engaged art stuff, which was the first time I came across the idea of a community engaged artist.
Right.
And I remember when I started to see that kind of work going,
this isn't a painting on a wall.
It's not a painting on the wall. And you and I have talked before about the sort of the open loop and the closed loop. So for me, making a painting and putting it on the wall and saying, I made this, please buy it.
Right.
Valid.
Yeah,
reasonable.
Lots of people do it and it's great.
Lots of people do it. And some people are spectacular enough in whatever way that people are like, whoa, I'm gonna buy it right now. I'm gonna buy 10.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome. Good for them.
That's awesome. Good for
those people.
And I say this with all, again, like intact. I'm not saying this to like be self-deprecating. I'm not that person. I'm not painting paintings that people are like stopped in their tracks. I make stuff that I like, that I think is good, but that closed loop of like I'm doing something so remarkable that people are like, take tens of thousands of my dollars.
Right.
That wasn't me. So
when do you think that transition happened? Because I've seen some of your old paintings and like they were traditional paintings where like, I don't know, I feel like you probably were thinking like deep dark thoughts and like, you know, sitting in a dark room, making some of those things, thinking how, I don't know, they affected the world or how people would, or like, I feel like you've made at least a couple of those. And then when did that transition happen to like, well, now I want to draw goblins?
I don't think it really did. I think,
you don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I think I just got better at knowing what I wanted to make.
That's what I mean. Like when did, 100%. But that's what I mean. Like when did that transition, like how did that transition happen? Right.
Yeah. So I think probably when I came across that term community engaged artist, what I was going to say was that was the first time that I learned about the concept that you're more like a facilitator and going into spaces where people, for whatever reason, maybe don't have access to the practice of drawing or making or whatever it is, and that your job becomes, can we make something together? Can we do something together? So that thing I was saying about the open and the closed loop, the painting up on the wall, closed loop. And, you know, I went through a lot of stuff. Maybe some of it was dark because I thought it was cool in undergrad or whatever. And maybe some of it hit at different points, things like, you know, the shelf portraits. I still really like those pieces. But the difference for me was that being a community engaged artist and saying, let's all make something together was much more alive to me. It was alive because I wasn't just by myself making something and putting it on the wall and saying, please buy it. We were all making it together. And I wasn't in charge of it the same way, which I think is still a big part of why all this works.
Right.
Is because, you know, if I make something on the wall and I'm making all the choices myself and then it turns out however it turns out, like, okay, that's great. But the idea that I'd be in a room with a bunch of people and we're all trying to make something, and they might look at me and be like, we don't care about the idea that you had. We want to do a different thing. I found that so refreshing and invigorating.
Yeah.
And that, to me, all of a sudden is an open loop.
Sure.
And
yeah,
also,
now we're making stuff together.
Totally. And also, it was an arena where there was this beautiful intersection, I think, between the things that I already knew how to do and the things that I wanted to do. So things like walk into a room, meet a bunch of people, be welcoming, make it not intimidating, be an artist, make stuff, produce work, get other people excited about producing work. That felt much more real to me than that weird third step of the bow tie, where it's like, now I'm in a gallery, my painting is $10,000.
Sure.
Surprise.
And there is space for that,
totally.
But there's also space for other art that, I don't know, I think a lot of us let go, and that's what, creative artists, I think a lot of us let that go at some point, where we're just like, well, that's for the children.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, why?
Sure.
Why does that have to be for the children?
That playfulness, you mean? Like, to try stuff?
Yeah, sure. For sure. And just whatever all that stuff is, and it's like, unless it's not a $10,000 on a painting on the wall, then it's not worth it.
Sure.
And we've known folks in our lives that have literally told us that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to make this silly little thing 9,000 times, or like, I don't want to make a bunch of stickers or whatever. And I think I think that could impact a lot of people.
Definitely.
And I think that could stop a lot of people from doing stuff. And I think that's why I was interested. And that's why obviously we have a lot of shared interests, but I'm fascinated, and I hope that people listen to the story where it's like, you can make, 1,000 stickers and make a living, and you can do other things as well.
Yeah.
Like, you can be playful. You can have fun. You can have fun.
I think that's a really personal choice. And I think there is still this idea, like you said, of sort of the serious artist doing something very specific. There are also incredible artists that deliberately make work that battles against that. So people like Yoshito Monera, who was one of the first artists to get really into the multiple and fully makes work about this idea that you can make big, gorgeous, important sculptures and also make a button you can get out of a vending machine.
For sure,
and it can be both.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of a conscious choice. And I remember one of the things that we talked about in sort of that middle space where I was finding my way was how I stopped following so many artists and I started following more illustrators. Because the way that they talked about their art practice felt more like what I wanted to do. And now I follow a mix of community engaged artists, Twitch streamers, content creators, musicians, whatever. But as I was finding what my community might be, one of the shifts that took place was this idea that, like, I love making silly stuff. I love making stuff that other people have input in. I'm also lucky enough to just be the type of person that's like, okay, we're making something together. You want blue? Sure, whatever. I don't care. You want to make blue? Go for it.
But it took a while to get there. Like, that's an interesting, that small gap between like working in the gallery and then like
making it sound like it was like a week.
And it's a long gap, right? I think that's something that people don't allow themselves, or they say like they put a limit where it's like I have a year to make this happen.
Or it's a money thing, or it's a stress thing.
Very
real.
But like
pressures.
You did a lot of extra things, and this is what I want to highlight though, is that I know because I got the inside scoop. But like you did a lot of things to make sure there was money coming in.
I did.
And at the time, you probably were like, oh, this is what I want to do. And then, but then it kind of shifts over time, and that's okay. And how do you become okay with those little micro shifts? Because I think a lot of people, like, we get panicked, right? About the things we need and want in life. And we think that we only give ourselves, like, I'm only giving myself a year to do this content thing. And if that doesn't work, which, what does work mean? Then I have to go get a job and I have to give up this dream altogether, And it's like you had a long period of time between losing your job to finding out what you're doing now.
Yes.
Which is working.
Years.
But there was things in the middle that you probably were doing and that were like, oh, this feels good too. I could hang out here for a while.
Yeah. And I still hold bits and pieces of all of that.
For sure.
I still hold bits and pieces of my corporate job when I started writing.
Yeah, sure.
contacting companies to be like, you should sponsor Camp Chaos. Let me tell you why. That's fully skills that I absolutely have from that era.
Yeah, and I would say that argument is great, because I think we never stop learning and growing, and that journey is so interesting. And like, if you're really paying attention to your life, hopefully you are pulling along a few lessons, and none of them are useless. Like, you can't say that you wasted all that time in that corporate job.
No, God,
that taught you a lot of things.
It was amazing.
And I think about the transition, and we haven't even talked about yet, but like the workshop part, right? Yeah. We talked about that.
That was almost as big a shift for me.
Yeah, and you were like, oh, sweet, I found the thing I want to do now. Mm-hmm. And then the world's like, how about not?
I remember you and I had conversations, to, I guess, maybe put the plot in it. One of the things that felt successful to me was that when I discovered that era of the community engaged artist, I started booking workshops, versions of workshops, different types of workshops with different, a lot of the charitable partners that we both still love and know in Ottawa, a lot of the arts organizations, but also like just private workshops with stores that we knew, lots and lots and lots of versions.
Anybody that would say yes.
Community engaged art, exactly. And I was really lucky that a lot of people said yes. And they said yes in a lot of different contexts. And they said yes at a lot of different price points to a lot of different workshops. And I taught workshops to people who were getting an MBA in an extremely prestigious career and places that were paying top dollar because they wanted a really premium experience for their corporate year-end party or something. And I taught in contexts where I was giving a community partner rate because this was a charitable partner that was absolutely in a place where they should be getting some kind of discounted rate. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that because someone was paying top dollar. But that definitely felt like, okay, I've got enough different revenue streams. And I was doing Patreon at the time to a much smaller scale, but still having some success there. And I was selling at a couple of little galleries, like, making some multiples. I had places that were carrying my cards. I was selling greeting cards.
Shout out to Maker House. Garrett Davies, who's
shout out
on the
Maker
podcast
House,
later.
Shout out Village Choir. Shout out, there's so many people who said yes to me, and I'm grateful for every single one of them. But I also remember when the pandemic happened and workshops shut down, I remember saying to you, I thought I had bulletproofed my business plan.
Right.
I did not predict for we cannot be together in public. I didn't have a plan for, and like,
because that was going fairly well. Like, that was working.
Well.
It was
a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, and I had that constant fear of what's the next workshop. I have to have the next one lined up, which I think I probably would have had to make an adjustment at some point. But it was hard. It was hard not to like want to just take a second and be like, oh, what a relief. I figured out a way to make this work. And I sometimes I wish I was better at doing that, because all I could think was like, this is great. When is the bottom going to fall out? What's the next thing, for better or worse. But I remember saying to you, and you and I were both sort of reeling and saying, how do we bulletproof our business plan for a world of online?
But that's interesting. So how I guess my bigger, better, deeper question is, how do you deal with change? Yeah, how do you deal with change?
I deal with change?
Because like change has happened a lot, and I feel like, I don't know, that's something that I feel like a lot of people aren't prepared for. We're not good at. Generally, creatives, I don't know. I feel like that's just a hard thing. Where it's like knowing that shift, or like, you mentioned Patreon. Yeah. Patreon is a long time thing that people are like, wow, you have a really successful Patreon now. And I'm like, well, yeah, but think back to 18 when it started, or 20, And it's like, when, like, I think one of the things you're always interested, it's always interested me in you, is that you are able to like say like, yeah, sure, I'll try that. Like one of the first times I went into your place and was like, well, who did all this art?
Yeah.
You're like, well, I did. I was like, we'll make a fucking website. You said,
okay. Sure.
All right, great. I'll make a really good fucking website. I know how to do it.
And at the time, I didn't have Instagram. Like because of that other job, I really didn't have a lot of social media and didn't know what the value of it was. But when you were like, this might be the value, I was like, okay, I'll try that. I can do that.
I guess that question around like change, like how do you deal with change, or why is it so easy for you to say yes when so many people are like, oh no, I don't know, I'm not ready, I can't do that, I'm not sure.
Well, I'm not ready. I'm never ready, but no one's ready. I don't know, who cares? Whatever.
But how did you get? Why are you so okay with that when so many people aren't? Like what can people? How do people? How do we get people ready to just say yes?
Do you
for
know
God's
what?
sake?
I actually think.
What's the matter with you people?
Stop! Don't yell at that.
Just make a fucking website.
No, you're doing great. Okay, I'm proud of you. No, it's a good that. I think you're really good at like getting to the thing under the thing. And for so many people, that is the thing under the thing. Yeah. I actually think that there are things you can do to train your brain and your body to be more okay in circumstances where there's change and upheaval and risk and fear. And I ended up making a whole workshop about this because I became so dependent on the tool. It's called Sketching and Self-Care. And it genuinely is about, how do I tell my body that discomfort isn't danger? How do I tell my body that, one of the simplest exercises in that workshop is drawing with your non-dominant hand, which unless you're ambidextrous, I put it in your mouth and try that. Yeah. Drawing with our non-dominant hand is uncomfortable. And our brains are designed to keep us safe. And one of the ways that you do that is to remain in the comfort zone. And that's all factual and true. And also, everything that I have ever done that has been worthwhile has been because I was at the edge of my comfort zone and probably my ability. Yeah. So I was probably doing a bad job, at least in some way, some of the time. And one of the things that I think a bad job, quote
whatever the hell that is.
I am not doing whatever's been aspirational for me to look at. I'm not doing that yet. So I do a lot of things to spend time in that place where I'm like, I'm drawing with my left hand.
Yeah.
I am right-handed.
Of course I doubt this because I haven't done,
And letting my brain be like, well, I don't like this drawing as much as the one with my right hand.
Yeah, duh,
totally.
No shit.
And look at, nothing happened.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And then you put that piece of paper in the garbage or whatever. Or
I make myself put it on social media and I say, everyone look at my bad drawing. And then I do that thing I still love this in workshops where I'll hold up a drawing and I'll be like, I'm going to do a magic trick. Yeah. And I'm like, I hate this drawing. This is my least. And then I switch to the other side and I go, I love this drawing. This is my favorite drawing. And then I always ask people, did the drawing change?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Your drawing doesn't care.
Yeah.
Your drawing, and I'm using the drawing.
It's just what you're saying.
I'm using the drawing as, because that's kind of the currency that I'm dealing in. That's the world. It can be anything. Yeah, it can be your hockey game. It can be the meal you cooked and it went sideways. It can be the walk you took and it was shorter than you wanted it to be. It can be the phone call you thought you should be able to make, but you were afraid of.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's like one of my favorite exercises when I work with groups is giving everybody a sheet of paper and I ask them just draw a tree. I say you have a minute and draw a tree.
I love that one.
And everybody draws a tree and everybody's kind of looking. I was like, don't look at each other. Stop it. And then they'll draw and like, well, what kind of tree? There's like questions. How high should I have? Shut up and draw a fucking tree. And they're like, just draw the tree, whatever. And they're like, oh, but I'm not really good. I don't care. You just draw a tree. Nobody's grading. I'm not going to grade you. I don't give a shit. It's so funny to see the plethora of trees that come out of that. Like most people draw a Christmas tree, but like because that's the tree they know, or they do a little like one stick and the fluffy thing or whatever,
or the one that's like a hand and then there's like a fluffy cloud on top of the hand.
But that's about it. And it's funny because and then some people draw small and some people draw big, and it's fascinating to me that people, I don't know, even as adults as we grow, and I still harken back. I'd probably say this on every episode, but like, it came from our education systems where like, it needs to look like this and you have to get an A+, otherwise you're a piece of crap.
Sure. Assigning merit and value. Sure.
Yeah. Based on what?
But also that, again, the good news is that is something that I spend a lot of time training myself out of. And I'm lucky enough to have the type of job and career and world now where I can really nurture that.
I think that's important. I hope you hear that as you're listening to this. I hope people understand, like, it's not, you have to train it. You have to practice that.
Every day.
You have to practice.
All the time.
Being bad at stuff, because of course you're going to be bad at it. You know? And
practice how you handle when your body is activated.
Oh, I'm not pleased with that.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, I've been thinking about something recently that's kind of been floating around my desk, and I don't really know exactly what to do with it yet, but I've had this idea of, well, what is perfect? Like, for anybody that's listening that's ever said, like, oh, well, this drawing's not perfect, or this piece of music isn't perfect, or whatever, when will it be perfect? Like, when would you be perfectly satisfied that every part of it is perfect?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And then is like, anyway, that's been something that's rattling around in my head, is like, when is it perfect? And is everything you ever do always going to be perfect?
Some of that
does it have to be?
Some of that too, I think, comes from I guess the technical terms are intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, internal validation, external. Sure. And one of the things that we talk about all the time is how making content and living any amount of your creative practice online means that maybe even more so than training myself away from risk aversion or fear of failure, I have to take constant steps to make sure that I'm aligned with my goals and my values and my why, because every single thing about making content online will tell you to chase things or want things or be validated by things that really have nothing to do with you,
Yeah.
All that stuff is luck of the draw. And that, I think, actually is now at least as much a part of my constant practice.
Yeah.
I want to continue to train away a fear of discomfort or an idea that being uncomfortable or out of my comfort zone is dangerous. But even more than that, I want to model the idea of being in these spaces and having a healthy relationship with a space where all of these platforms and all of these tools are amazing. Online community has changed my life.
Sure.
And also it would chew me up and spit me out if the algorithm so deemed it.
Sure.
You got to find a way to ride that wave, not let it.
Can we talk a little bit about, I want to talk a little bit about like slow growth. Because that was a process that, we're talking about that and we've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I want to talk about it specifically around like, when you first started out doing any kind of art and like kind of being online now, so we've jumped, ahead a little bit, like now you're online, you're doing some stuff. So workshops happened, they didn't happen, out of your control.
I mean, they happened online. I was actually pretty lucky. I had some more. But yes.
Yeah,
true.
But I mean, like, we were able to, like,
we had to adapt.
And, like, where you are now, I would say, is much more true to yourself. But it's taken a long process, I think, to get there. And it's taken a lot of consistency and, like, continual learning.
Yeah.
How do we get more people to do that? like, what was your process? Like, how did that happen? Like, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but why didn't you just give up at some point? Like when you were like, oh, I'm only making $100 here on Patreon or whatever. And you're like, well, why don't I? Okay, but I have to get a real job now.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, we only have 2 viewers. Like, well, fuck it.
I mean, in different ways.
Yeah.
In different ways, there were definitely points no matter what. I mean, one of the things that I think is helpful, at least for me, is I always had a few different things on the go. So I was doing workshops. I was also trying to do Patreon. I was also probably working part-time at a gallery. I was also probably volunteering at a couple of spaces that were like aspirational to me. So I had a few different things that I was measuring my energy out to, and I was constantly watching for what was working, what was sustainable. I was trying to keep a really close eye on what was sustainable. And I was watching myself for what felt authentic. And I was also trying really hard to guard against that idea of a starving, suffering artist and the idea that we have to like martyr ourselves on this career because, you know, I had seen so many traditional artists in school and, you know, early on in sort of the working at a gallery days that I thought, you know, we still talk about this. There is someone watching you always. There's someone coming up behind you. No matter how early you think you are, there's someone coming up behind you.
Yeah.
Be a good example to them. Don't be the worst boss you've ever had. Don't be the one who writes like a whiny Facebook post about how hard anything you've ever done is. Even if it's true, find a way to make it true. But if you're going to do that, talk to the people you should be getting support from and think about the people who are watching you as an example. I'm not saying you shouldn't get to vent. I think that's necessary and healthy, and it's part of why we need colleagues and community. But I think all the time about what might have been different if 6-year-old Brenda had seen examples of people doing anything that felt like what I wanted to do. I'm really conscious, probably hyper conscious of that now. So I think part of why I didn't quit is because I wanted to be a good example to 6-year-old Brenda. Right. She wouldn't have quit. She had two fistfuls of crayons drawing while she was screaming the story to herself. Laying on her tummy on the floor, you know.
Right. While no one was in your room.
That kid's my inspo, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that's part of it, but also having a few things on the go so I could watch for, this is kind of working. Yeah. This is not working. Okay, let's try something different, but I have this going pretty good. Okay, maybe blah, 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 you know.
I was just laughing because remember when you wanted to make pins?
You love talking about the one time I said I maybe would make pens.
But I just like that, you were just willing to try things and like, you know, some was going to work.
Kinds of stuff.
But so when you say you were like watching yourself and you were looking for stuff, like what were you physically watching for? What were you feeling?
So one of the things that I did in my terror about having gotten so far into a career that I didn't want was I went on a 10-day silent meditation retreat. Where
just say that again, real quick.
Brenda, I knew you were going to say.
Well, I think it's important because anybody that's watching or listening.
I went on a
10-day right at the
day silent meditation retreat where. She did. Ironically, actually, you were woken from sleep by a gong. Which is kind of a fun little tautological moment. And this was a bit extreme, but I was feeling a bit extreme at the time. It felt like I needed to do a big important thing to spend more time with my own self, thinking about what nourished me and what made sense for me. And I just learned what that felt like in my body. I learned what a yes felt like to me. I learned what a no.
What is that? Do you know? Like, can you describe that?
For me, it's it's very gut based.
Yeah.
For me, it's a lot like a no to me feels a lot like the flu. It feels like fatigue. It aches. Typically, it's very my appetite is shot if I'm in a no. You know, a yes to me always gives me a lot of energy. It feels very excited. I always try to give an enthusiastic yes over a reluctant no.
Yeah.
And I watch other people. I try to watch other people closely for when they're giving a reluctant yes to me. I never want someone's reluctant yes. But I tried to learn what that felt like because I think it's hard. We're often...
Well, nobody teaches us that.
Nobody teaches us that.
We don't know that.
And we're actually taught the opposite. A lot of times we're saying, do I look at doing my bookkeeping and wait until I go, yes, no, I don't do, I'm like, but I say yes to myself often enough that I know what it feels like at times that I have a choice.
Yeah.
And I watched myself for that really, really closely. And I still watch myself for that. I say no all the time. I say no at times that I know there are people who are like, that was mean. I constantly am saying no. I'm willfully ignoring.
Yeah, I know that.
Lots of stuff. I say no all the time. All the time. And I still have to sort of contend with holding the space around my no. Things like, you know, we talk all the time. It's a bit of a joke now about like, I don't check my DMs on Instagram. I don't look at those. I don't look at them. There are a couple of ways to get in touch with me directly. And they're very specific because I want to be able to do this for a long time.
Creating those boundaries is such a huge part of that.
But it means I say no.
But you have to say no, and you disappoint some people.
I disappoint. I offend people.
For sure.
I don't do things, or I don't see things, or I don't know about things that definitely. There's been times that people are like, "Oh, you should," and like, you know, that.
Well, and even probably there is an element too, probably where it's like, oh, that didn't feel great, but it's like, but I need that. Like you have to tell yourself that. I think you have to practice that.
I also think it's helpful to practice no's with, even when you don't need to, with people that you trust you have a relationship with that will survive. You and I say no to each other enthusiastically all the time. Do you want to do this?
Sure.
No!
Absolutely not. That's not something I want to do.
Not. Or,
and both of us are like, oh, good. Thank you.
I want your enthusiastic
I only want you to be happy if you're going to do this with me.
Not interested in your reluctant no. And we try it out with, you know, for us, immediate family is kind of the next. And I practice saying like, I love you. I don't want to do that.
Exactly.
I won't do that. Those two things.
I don't know, with no other reason.
No other reason.
Just I don't want to
do that.
I don't want to.
And
I think it's wonderful.
It takes practice.
That's wonderful.
And trying it out with people that I'm like, I know this relationship will. So there are times that I'm saying no, and I'm like, this person might think I'm the worst now. And I have to decide what's more important to me. Do I want them to think I'm a hero? Or do I want to be able to do this really well for a long time? Right. Yeah, I will always choose my yes first.
That's where I think that the authenticity of what you're doing now, like I don't know, like are you more authentic now to who you are and who you want to be than when you were corporate Brenda?
What do you think?
I mean, for sure. But could this be like, is there a possibility, just small, tiny possibility that, like, you know, you're just sucked into the machine again doing something else?
Sure, maybe.
You know?
Maybe.
But does it feel, but I feel like your gut would tell you otherwise.
I think I'd be better at knowing it now. I think I'd be better at knowing it now because I think
you've worked really hard to get to it.
Yeah,
and I think all of those things led to being a very authentic person who gets to enjoy what they're doing and the people they're doing it with.
I also think it comes a little bit from really caring about and really wanting to model healthy behaviors. That's a big way that I check in on my authenticity, because if I'm going to be a healthy person and a successful artist, which was always the barrier, then this is the thing that I need to do. It means saying no all the time. It means taking very good care of myself in the times that I'm not online. It means...
And what? Sorry, what is that? I always ask you this question. Because people say like, I take care of myself. Whatever. What the fuck does that mean? Like, what does that mean? You have a regular sleep schedule.
I have a very regular sleep schedule. It's the ones that I would consider in some ways the freebies. And I say that because they're freebies for me. Everybody has different levels of access, different things they're working with. But for me, some of the freebies are I have the ability to choose my bedtime. So I choose my bedtime and I go to bed. And I know when I'm really high functioning and I know when I start to crash, and I honor those things and I plan my life around suiting it. I also, I work out a lot because for me, that is a very good way to get rid of some of the false signals from my body, like aches and pains or nervousness or nervous energy. I get a lot of pent up energy. And working out helps me be a little more balanced and centered so I can hear my yes and my no clearly, and I'm not getting like false positives on either of those. I eat decently, but also I let myself eat junk food when I want junk food. I'm not super like strict or militant because I also have seen, for me personally, it is a better choice to have like not a very moral relationship with food. I don't really like to think of chocolate as being bad and broccoli as being good. So that works for me. You know, like the basic, the basic, like it seems so simple, but
But you eat a balance.
I eat a balance, and I eat.
But all of that stuff's
cookie,
important.
I eat a cookie when I want junk food.
But all of that
food.
stuff's important,
but
right?
All that
Working
stuff is
out,
really
sleeping,
important.
doing that stuff,
and I have to do it all. And I notice if I don't do
when creatives, like I think a lot of creatives don't. They're like, oh, I stay up and I'm working on this thing until 2 a.m. or whatever. And it's like, well, is it 1% better than if you would have just left it 11 p.m. or what? And it's like,
yeah. But for some
also,
of us,
I think you have a routine.
I have a routine,
which I think is nice.
That is very helpful. And also, I think for some of us, that false positive of like, this was hard to do, so it must be of value.
Yeah.
That's not true.
For sure. Yeah.
You feeling sick and tired isn't where your value is. And that is a deeply prevalent idea, not just in the arts, I think, but in sort of the like hustle culture that like your value is somehow baked into like,
I worked 80 hours.
I worked
90 hours. Like, you're better.
And I totally get where that comes from. For me personally, I have not had an experience of doing my best work.
Sure.
Putting out my best when I subscribe to that. And maybe there are people it works for. And if it does, listen, more power to you. Have at her.
Yeah. I think as long as you find... I think for me, all of this has come down to like finding that authentic, whatever makes your body feel good and makes your brain feel good, And
and also, I wouldn't discount the fact that if you're doing all of the things that you think you need to do, and your body doesn't feel good or your brain doesn't feel good, that I would hope that we are more in an era now where talking to a doctor, going to a mental health professional, if medication is the thing that balances you, man, get those meds. Get them. Use it. Just 100%. Finding the tools that
But keep trying shit.
Absolutely.
Just keep trying more shit,
You deserve to feel well.
Yeah. And to enjoy what you're doing most of the time, right? And I don't know. What happens when you get locked in? I mean, so what happens if you hadn't got fired? You think you'd still be doing... I mean, I guess it's hard to tell, right? But like...
I don't know.
But what for those people that are like, oh God, if they're listening to this and they're like, I want to leave my job, but I can't,
Sure.
Why can't, like, why not? And like, I think there's merit too for us talking a little bit about the financial side of things, where it was like, okay, well, I don't buy as much makeup, or I don't buy as much this or that, or like, I think there was some sacrifices there at some point.
Oh, for me? Yeah. I definitely went through a period of making much less money. And money is still something that can really stress me out. That is
for sure.
One of the things.
Well, it's not constant, right?
And we had to, I mean, it took a few tries. And one of the things that I had to do, and again, this was a huge luxury, I had to think about what is the number of months of living expenses that I need to have saved just to feel an accurate yes and feel an accurate no, because I don't want to be saying yes out of fear and I don't want to be saying no out of anger. All of those things. And I figured out what that number is, and I worked towards having that set aside so I could tell my brain, we got it.
Sure.
Anytime I was like, but I still, when people message me about workshops that I can't take, gigs that I'm not free for, commissions that I'm not open to, stuff I don't want to do, I feel a false yes. And my false yes is, for me, usually fearful. Some part of it is the like, still that, get the gig, take the gig, always say yes to everyone, doesn't matter if it almost kills you.
I have to.
I have to. Yeah. And I will physically go and look and be like, hang on. Like, we have this is the number we agreed on, brain. We're good. And like, that is a luxury to be able to do that. That's something that took time to accumulate towards.
It took a long time too.
And that's something that works for me, because my sweet little brain will accept whatever nonsense I give her. And I say, wait, look at over here. Remember about how we decided? And that
checking back in with yourself.
That helps.
Checking back in with yourself. I think that's something we don't do checking in periodically with yourself instead of being on autopilot.
Or checking in with colleagues. I think having community then is really important. Having
good friends, partners,
mental health professionals,
families,
counselors, even if it's a hotline, talk to your stuffed animal, something, journal.
But I do think checking in with yourself, I think we need to get, to me, I think that's something that we lack in society, of like checking in with yourself and like sitting down and being like, how do I feel today?
Sure.
And like literally, how do I feel today? And what are the things I want to accomplish? And like that intrinsic motivation of like, I think we need to get better at that, just as a whole.
I think also,
I don't think we're taught that.
I think also, it can be beneficial to have some things that impact your mood. So I keep a lot of stuff in my toolkit that I know has a specific impact on my mood, because I think your brain can also eat itself when it's just self. One of the things that I experienced during lockdown was too much time for my brain to remember there was a couple periods where I was like, I am anxious. I have never had physically sick, physically sick, and like having to figure out like, body, where is this coming? And it was coming from like, oh my gosh, the world's on fire. But I had to find a way to process that as one little crazy ecosystem and figure out like, I've got too much time to just be thinking about, and like there's not the same options available. So where do I find options? What do I do? How do I build some healthy habits that are going to sustain me, use up my energy, let me feel for what a real yes and a real no feel like, so that I can separate that out from the chaos. And I have a lot of tools, things like music, knowing what music puts you in a good mood. I save, this is one of the beautiful things about social media, I have a ton of different feeds and channels and stuff that I specifically keep that I'm like, I know this puts me in a great mood. You give me an unusual animal friendship. A duck made best friends with a golden retriever. Amazing. Tell me about, I have favorite workouts that I know really work for me. I have drawing exercises. I have things like hyping up and pumping up my friends that I think are just like when I go through my Instagram stories and I'm like, look at this one, look at this, look at this.
That feels good for you.
I know that's going to make me feel good.
So find those things.
Write them down.
Keep searching for them. And also like, it's funny, I don't know why this popped into my head right now, but it's like, that one item that's at the grocery store that you go to get every time, and then you go the next time and like you're like, oh, should I try something else?
Oh yeah, and you're like,
and
then
you're like,
I'm gonna have it and I'm gonna be sad that it's not this one.
Yeah, that's not the other one.
That's not the one.
And like you just keep like, there's nothing wrong with just eating the same. Like it's okay. Like I do that to myself all the time where I'm like, oh, I should try these different things.
Listen to a song until you wear it out.
Maybe I just like this thing. Maybe I'm gonna eat this thing until I'm sick of it.
I go through meal obsessions where we laugh all the time about my meal obsessions.
Go eat mafalda pasta. Get mafalda pasta. Go look up the recipe.
Of noodles changes
very important.
The dish completely.
Yeah, it's very important. It's very important. Yeah. But find your mafalda pasta that you love out there in life.
Follow the mafalda pasta.
Yeah, there you go.
Of your heart.
But I do think that's I love that you're at a point now where I think you found pretty authentic self. I don't know if you could be any more authentic. Yeah, I don't think that's even possible.
I don't know if I could.
I wish that for anybody that's listening. I hope that they watch the stuff that you're doing. I hope that they find their own peace. I hope that I hope that you fill your life with people that are living authentically and healthy and have nice barriers that help them. And I think. We talk about the freebie too of like, I think routine is huge for you and for anybody creatively.
It helps me.
And I think consistency is the freebie that we always talk about.
Consistency can be different than routine also.
Yeah. Just being consistent, consistently like showing up for yourself, doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, all of those things matter. And I think it leads to a really cool creative space where, I don't know, you get to do cool shit. Like, look at all the stuff that's going on.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't. A lot of other people contributed to this. Yeah, some of it I did.
Yeah. No, I know you didn't make it all, but but it all came here.
Yes.
And I think that's really cool. So thank you for hanging out with me on the 50th episode.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And for for anybody that's listening, if you need to get an energy boost on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you can't do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can check out artinjest.tv. No, twitch.tv/artinjest.
It's
I'm making up my own.
It's his first day.
Artinjest.tv. That's going to be a new
Artinjest,
yeah,
I am what comes up.
You'll find it.
It will be me.
And then you'll feel better. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Episode 50. We did it. It's in the books. We did it. Episode 50. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you haven't had a chance yet to please give this podcast a rating, it really helps. I appreciate it. I love hearing from you guys. If you're working on cool stuff and you don't know who to tell me. Even if you know who to tell me too. go to domorecoolshit.com. Drop me a note there. I love hearing what you guys are working on. It's always inspiring. It's always exciting. And I hope you enjoyed that episode that I just had with Brenda. It was such a cool conversation. Brenda and I have conversations every day, every morning, every night. We're talking about the stuff that we're working on. We get jazzed between the two of us. And I think it's such a treat to be able to share some of that with you. Brenda obviously is a ball of energy. She is constantly thinking up new creative stuff and allows her mind to wander and allows the energy to flow. And it's been a real treat to watch that growth and to watch that journey happen. It's fun. It's just fun. And I hope that you understand that you can do this too. I hope when you watch this or you listen to this episode that you fully understand that it is totally within your grasp to become your authentic self, and that you too can find a world where you're just happy. You can do the cool shit that you want to do, and that can just be so fun, so exciting, so interesting. And I hope you got that from this conversation. And I hope you join me on the next episode, which is June 10th, where I want to talk about a little bit more in depth about the authentic life and trying to figure out who you are as a human being, because what the hell else are we doing here if we're not doing that? So thank you so much for tuning into episode 50. I really appreciate it. And until the next time, I hope you get out there and do more cool shit, my friends.